so before we get started, because I know we're the last session before your lunch break, I've just got a couple of questions and I'm going to get you to stand up if your response to this question is yes. So do you know that there's a HTA review ongoing at the moment? Okay, cool. Okay, so for those people who are standing up, please stay standing up if you know that there's been an interim report released by the IGA. IAG. Yeah, I got that wrong. Okay, and of those who are standing up, how many have actually looked at the roadmap? Interesting. Okay, cool. So you can take your seats. Thanks for that. So I'm going to start the first question off to Liz, who heads up Medicines Australia, as you know. Liz, HTA and the review, is it going to be more talk and consultation, or are we actually going to get some benefit for patients and Australians? Do you want
Yes and yes. I think that the HTA review was a really rigorous process that listened and heard from hundreds, probably thousands of people who have a view, driven by inquiries where patients are saying it takes too long, where industry is saying it takes too long, where clinicians are saying we don't have access to the things we need. There is a definite momentum to get changes for patients, but if you look at the review, and I know all of you are looking forward to putting it on your reading list, that a lot of it is going to require consultation and collaboration in order to actually implement.
Okay, yeah. So, Adrian, from a rare diseases perspective, what does the HTA review mean for your patients that you treat every day?
Yeah, look, I think from a rare disease perspective, and I'll answer all the questions you asked today from a rare disease perspective, because BioMarin, we're purely focused on rare diseases. There's a lot of recommendations that are relevant for rare diseases. However, there are a couple that are really specific to the life-saving drugs program. And I'll talk to that if that's okay, because I think there's some good opportunity, but there's also a lot of risk for that really strong program that we have in Australia. So just for those of you who haven't worked with the life-saving drugs program before, it's been designed for ultra-rare medications of a prevalence of under 1 in 50,000 patients. It's also, as the name suggests, for life-saving therapy, so you have to be able to prove that the therapy is life-saving. And also the program is for therapies that are not deemed cost-effective by the PBAC. So that's I guess the post that you have to get through is to be deemed not cost-effective by the PBAC. It's a really good program. Hundreds of Australian patients have benefited from these life-saving medications over the last 30 years, and it's really important that that program remains sustainable. One of the key recommendations of the HTA review is to actually take away the current two-step process, which is a rejection by the PBAC, and then to an expert panel of the life-saving drugs program. And that two-step process is taking a long time at the moment. It's about, we've done some research at Medicines Australia about the length of time from TGA registration to reimbursement, and it's actually around 1,200 days, so even longer than the statistics that Liz will talk about for PBS medicines. So that has to change, but the risk that we fear is that as part of the change of that, where the PBAC will now be able to make direct recommendations onto the life-saving drugs program, the risk is that the program could just get folded into the PBS. And the life-saving drugs program is clearly not fit for purpose to fit under the PBS. It was created separately for a reason. These are for ultra-rare medications where the medicines are deemed to be not cost-effective. There's not the economies of scale in manufacturing. So for all of these reasons, it will not fit on the PBS. So I think it's something that we all need to work together in this room to make sure that we inform stakeholders and educate them on the benefits of having this program for these ultra rare medicines, and that it needs to stay as a separate program. It's not fit for purpose for the PBS, so we can maintain sustainability for patients for new medications coming, and also the important services that are offered to patients through that program. So there's a good opportunity, but there's also risks as part of this, and I think that's all of our jobs to try and shape that.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Adrian. So Louise, just a question from your perspective. What do you see are the risks of this reform happening or not happening?
Well, if you go back to the objectives are to get medicines to Australian patients faster and to make this market an attractive first launch environment. So ladder right back up there. If we get this right, we will achieve both of those things. And we know from the data that it's not just a matter of medicines coming later. Some medicines are not coming at all. And this has become tougher over the last several years as the hurdle has become higher. And the decision-making patterns that we can all see tell us that there are medicines that can and should be here and they're not. If we get this right, we will deliver on both of those things. But I think it's a tough balance. We're all impatient for the change. The review itself has taken a long, long time. As Liz said, hundreds, if not thousands, of people were involved in this. Many, many topics have been canvassed. There are 50 recommendations. From my point of view, the art of success here is to deliver on policy and methods and process. We don't want to just have a sausage machine that runs faster to deliver the same outcomes. We want something that delivers some of the same outcomes faster, but different and better outcomes for Australian patients that will give us greater confidence in the future that we can predict what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and to have that confidence for industry, clinicians, patients, family members, that we can get the medicines that we need when we need them. We've all been in that situation where we look at ourselves, at a family member with maybe a mild condition, but sometimes a really serious condition, and someone's diagnosis and treatment recommendation. And for me, partly because I live in this system, I've been in that moment where my first thought was, oh wow, is it going to be available on the PBS for this particular need? And my heart was in my mouth and I went and checked, and in that situation it was. And the relief I felt for my family member, for their immediate and extended family, was huge, because that was a really important medicine. And had they had to go without it or had to pay for it privately, it would have been an extraordinary burden, physically, socially, emotionally, financially. So I remain optimistic that we can change these things, but it's going to be a haul to continue on. And as I said, everyone's impatient because it's gone on a long time already. It's so important. Don't give up now. Keep going, figure out the priorities, and really go for those things that are short-term and urgent, and don't give up on the things that are going to take longer to secure and deliver.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, Louise. So Sarah, Louise just said the things that are urgent and the things that are going to happen short-term. Is there one thing that you think will make a big difference that will happen quickly with the HTA and the roadmap?
That's a great question, and I'm not going to answer it. I'm actually going to implore us. So you asked, Louise, like, what's the biggest challenge here? And I'm concerned about the apathy. Mm-hmm. If in a room of industry stakeholders who have invested in this HTA review, we all know about it. Most people stood up, but a lot of us sat down. I didn't. When it got to, are we familiar with the roadmap? And so the apathy of change, because it has taken a long time, is if we as an industry, industry partners, don't understand this HTA reform review and the roadmap, we are not going to be successful in change, because we need to start having conversations with ourselves on this, and also with our broader stakeholders, those barbecue conversations, and encourage patients and wider community to remain caring, and force our politicians to spend the money that's needed to implement this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Great. And I was going to go straight to you, Liz, but yeah, go for it.
I'd like to jump in there, because I think one of the things I alluded to in that last session was advocate for each other. And not just for yourselves. And I think that, you know, education within our companies around the HTA review, I think those frontline sales reps, marketing reps, MSLs should be talking to clinicians about HTA reform, not just about the particular product that they're educating doctors about, because the clinicians have no idea. And you saw what the clinicians were criticising: price and accessibility. Get me access. Well, I'm sorry, we need clinicians to be fighting for the access, because pharma industry would, wouldn't we? Of course we would. There's a profit in it. Whereas if clinicians are saying I need access, if patients are saying I need access, that's going to resonate far more with our decision makers, our funders, our policy makers, than if industry is saying it. So, yay, Sarah, and all of you sat down, go and read that report.
Thanks, Liz. And I think that takes us to the next question. Sarah, I know you've recently changed your job title to be value and market access. So if we're going to drive earlier access to medicines, we need to demonstrate value. Who owns that ability to demonstrate? I mean, Liz has made a little bit of a comment, but is it just us?
No, I think value, to me, is kind of like beauty. It's all in the eye of the beholder. Value means different things to different people, depending on the context and what that's about. So, yeah, we changed our team name, we changed my title, because we wanted to do that mental mind shift away from thinking access is just about initial market access. It's not. It's about communicating value and understanding value according to patients. As a patient myself, value can mean various different things. Is it I want to be healed quickly, or I want to live with my disease but in a manageable way? So value, is it time? When I'm at the end, facing a decision about end of life. So value for patients is very different to value as a clinician who needs to communicate and think and consider trade-off decisions about whether the side effect is more important than the benefit of the product. Sometimes the benefit of the product isn't the thing that is the driver in the decision-making process there. For our government, we hear constantly values about cost containment, but increasingly and excitingly, we're now talking about value being more broader than just the health benefits. COVID taught us that health is an economic issue. So now we're talking value in much broader senses, like how can we enable people to be more productive? How can we benefit our society in those ways? And value as a stakeholder in this machine, as an access professional, is about communicating and thinking about value to my company. Yep, we have to make money because that allows us to invest. But we're not just doing it for the money, are we? we want to make and have a benefit within the communities that we serve. So value is multifaceted. Mm-hmm. Everyone has a voice in that decision about how and what that value needs to be.
Yeah. Louise, thoughts on value and where it sits and who needs to be involved?
For everything that we're doing, we should be providing value. Access isn't just a task, and I think often we get so wound up in what am I doing next, and am I ticking the box, and have I achieved access? And we should be asking ourselves, right through the questions of unmet need, clinical, economic, and financial impact, where are we providing value? Where are we able to see the opportunities, the real unmet need? Where can we add value from different perspectives as well? And most importantly, what do the patients want? And we heard this morning, sometimes patients and clinicians have differing views, but are we getting it right? And then backing it in. So we know we often come with phase 2, phase 3 studies that are just the tip of the iceberg. They're answering a pretty specific and narrow question in a pretty specific and narrow population over a really short time. And I think the real challenge, and this is a challenge for industry in terms of ongoing investment, is to back that in over time and then have the data and the courage to come back and say, does it do what we thought it would? Is it being used as we thought it would be used? Is it delivering? And if we're going to be measuring value, data and data accessibility is crucial. And we know that in this country, the data availability, the data accessibility is not where it should be. And this came up in the HTA review, and there are a number of recommendations that point to real-world data, accessibility, creation, governance, and use for decision-making as real-world evidence. And this, I think, is incredibly important that we embrace it as an industry, as a sort of a scientific community, and for Australia to bring down some of the divides and the walls that we have, and really get ambitious around this, so that, similar to some of the large insurers we might see in other countries, you really do have the ambition of getting some end-to-end data and a plan to ask those questions and a proper plan to answer the questions over time.
Do you want to add anything to that, Liz?
I will, because I think, Sarah makes a good point that value means different things to different people. Well, I'll tell you what it means to the government. It means the price. And they won't pay a different price for the same health outcome. And that's where we fall over, because we don't value the incremental health outcomes ourselves, let alone translate that into a value that the government will put a price on. And I think that's what we need to work out with the HTA review.
So Adrian, a question without notice here, but I know we've worked together and with Liz and even with some of Louise's team over a number of years around the LSDP and what it means. How do we make sure that that value that is seen for those families, where it makes such a big difference, is translated beyond just rare diseases?
Yeah, look, it's a huge challenge, Julie. So thanks for that question. Just listening this morning at the panel and the research that shows the negative promoter score, just in general about the pharmaceutical industry, just shows how little knowledge there is out in the community. So trying to demonstrate the value that these life-saving medicines are providing for rare disease patients to the broader community is an absolutely massive challenge, because we're not doing that in general as an industry on its own. So I don't necessarily have an answer to that question, but it obviously is getting the word out as much as we can, speaking to stakeholders. So the stakeholders in this case are obviously government, but the patients who are benefiting from these therapies themselves, and that they really understand how the system works. They can see the unintended consequences of these type of suggested changes, like moving the LSDP across to the PBS, what that would mean for them, and just having those conversations. So we have a rare disease working group at Medicines Australia. We have put together a discussion paper really highlighting the value of the LSDP, but also what some of the unintended consequences could be of a move. And our job now as an industry is to make sure we're having those conversations with the right stakeholders so they understand that.
That's a really good point. We've only got a few more minutes. Louise, I know I'm going to ask you this question, and it's not something that you're comfortable with, but do you think we can use AI, the buzzword, to help us improve access in market access?
Wait for it, a one-word answer, yes. we can.
Yeah.
And I think I've been thinking about this, and it's all at just the beginning, right? And you have to think about this as not just HTA, but truly for market access. And I was talking to one of my team members and, trying to get some enthusiasm for exploring HTA, or AI, sorry. And this person said, I just feel like such a novice. I'm like, don't worry about it, we all are. But I do think the potential is there. We have to look right through the continuum, back to those questions of where is the unmet need, where's the value, and then following it through. AI has the potential to answer a whole lot of questions and generate more, to explore, from the beginning what's needed. And there was a really interesting paper I read out of Harvard. I think it was a 2024 paper where AI was being used to identify opportunities for repurposing by using all kinds of existing health data, breaking that down by patients, comorbidities, concomitant meds, and really drilling in and saying, hang on a second, we're identifying something here. So there's some very unusual uses. I think we need to come back to the question of data. So AI will generate on what it's been fed, and I think we've all heard of a certain report that was delivered to government fairly recently, and it had hallucinated pretty badly and made up references and legal judgments and all kinds of things that would really bother us as industry, as patients, as physicians. So when the questions are to be addressed and answered, We want to have confidence that any predictive AI is going to deliver something that's reliable. But I think there's real potential. I think we need to look at the skills that we need to build and the capabilities we need for this, and come at it, from a collective standpoint. What will defeat the use of AI, I think, is a sort of an adversarial and combative world of your AI versus mine. These are not lightsabers. It should be, collective use of a common sort of good around the data for patients.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I agree. I think there's so many opportunities. I know we've had some conversations, but at the end of the day, we really need to be able to look at it from the human's still going to be there and involved, and the human's going to have to make sure that we eliminate those hallucinations. Liz, I'm going to let you make a last comment in terms of, we didn't see a lot of people who have seen this roadmap. So this is the roadmap that's just been released and was shared a couple of weeks ago by Andrew Wilson, who heads up the Implementation Action Group. For everyone in the room, what's the one thing you want them to do, walking away from here, apart from looking at it, that could make a difference and change the dial here for access to new medicines in Australia?
Certainly give Medicines Australia a call if you want to understand what the key messages are. There's probably 3 key messages that every single person in this room can deliver in 30 seconds and then get on with your day job. So let's all work together for the same outcome.
Okay, thanks everyone.